Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, with a Becucked Charles Coulombe.
Becucked?
Yes, Becucked.
Becucked?
Yep.
Is that as in I have become a cuck?
That's right. Or so your Twitter following has said.
Oh, you're referring to the little fracas this past week.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Bring it on. I don't care. So a lot of people objected to my article in the Catholic Herald praising the House of Habsburg as having a European vision that could save the continent. And oh, the objections. I can't actually tell you what most of the objections were because that would require the use of foul language. And all I could think of, I don't suppose you remember the film from 1999, Curtain Call, with Michael Caine. And, gosh, I can't think of her now. She plays the old lady on Downton Abbey.
Yeah, Margaret, oh gosh, I forgot her name.
You know what I mean. She's wonderful.
Maggie Smith?
Maggie Smith, indeed.
Yeah, there we go.
So, at one point, he's told, as so many of the dear little children on Twitter told me, to F off. And his response was, yes, F off, the last refuge of the inarticulate. And that's pretty much how I felt looking at the dear little ones peppering away. You know, what was funny, I did block over 100 people that day. It was like a slaughter.
You did. One of the guys complained on our YouTube comments. He's like, dude, tell Charles to chill out because he just blocked. I don't know whether he did something or not, but yeah.
I don't know either. I was blocking right and left. It was like, I felt like King Kong knocking down the airplanes, you know.
Oh my.
But, I mean, it was amazing. It was just F this and F that. But as I looked at the backgrounds of the people, you know, how their self-descriptions,
yeah,
it's amazing how many transgendered Marxists were among them. I didn't even have any idea that was a community. But apparently, being a transgendered Marxist, I mean, why they would follow the Catholic Herald, I don't know, the Catholic Herald Twitter feed. But apparently, my fan base amongst transgendered Marxists is very small, if it exists at all. They had a lot of unpleasant things to say. I mean, to the degree that I could understand what they were saying. Because I usually kind of, when I see an F-bomb, I kind of turn off. You know.
You've been really, there was like a lot of things this past 2 weeks that was going on. You said something that I didn't like too much. You said, you criticized people use the word dude. And I felt that was sort of a renunciation of your California heritage.
Well, there's that possibility. No, but I mean, the problem is, if you're going to make an observation of any kind, and you start it with dude, nobody over 16 is going to take you seriously.
Unless you're in California.
Well, okay, you're right. I'm going to tell you something now, not just for you, Vinny. Not just for all of the painstaking staff there at the Tumblr House Towers. Not just for all the people in the old neighborhood, but for everyone in the blessed Golden State, to include Governor Newsom, to include the Senate, who just voted to break the seal of the confessional, to Mayor Garcetti, to all the bishops in California, Catholic and Episcopalian. The whole bunch. California is not the entire world. I said it. I know it's heresy. I know that when I get back to California for summer break, that I will be dragged up to Sacramento and made to face trial. I'll be like Cardinal Pell. I know. But you know what? It's the truth. I think it was Eleanor Glynn, that famous English novelist and California Hollywood screenwriter of the 1920s. who made the observation that California is a small island off the coast of Earth. So, it is true that prefacing your remarks with dude will not affect your standing in California. I grant you. The rest of the world, it's a different story. So, if you want to make a serious thing, and you're not, and if you don't care about the non-California audience, disregard what I'm about to say. Forget it. London, Paris, Rome, Vienna, forget them. LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Monterey, the blessed realm of San Bernardino and all the Inland Empire, Sacramento, Marin County, the Redwoods, Crater Lake, all these areas, Mount Shasta, where the Ascended Masters hover. If that's your audience, then dude, you're great. But outside the Golden Realm, don't do it.
Okay. Any other axes to grind? You had a lot just yesterday. I mean, you triggered me. You're showing me this priest who says, or not priest, but this cardinal who says you shouldn't use the word father for priests.
Yes, Cardinal do. John do. I wish John don't. But anyway, yeah, he said we shouldn't say father to priests. So I guess we shouldn't say excellency to bishops, because I'll be presuming they're excellent. And I have seen little proof of that. We shouldn't say eminence to cardinals, because that would mean they were eminent, and John Dew is perhaps proof they're not. As far as popes go in holiness, well, the jury's out. So, all I can say, Your Elegance, is may you get what you want for others.
Okay.
And I hope you get it good and hard, as my dad used to say.
Wow.
Give them what they want, good and hard.
Let's try to get back to the foul-mouthed thing, because I just had. I mean, so you have a problem with that, but that's just mainstream. I mean, we have a president who's foul-mouthed. I mean, that's how he was elected, because we as a people are foul-mouthed.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask you to come back with me now down memory lane.
Okay. Okay.
We're losing the decades now.
Uh-oh.
Yes. The teens that are now almost gone the other way, we're going back. The zeros, 90s, bye-bye, 80s, 70s, 60s, with the people that run the show now who are still alive. I feel uncomfortable here in the 60s. What's that? I feel uncomfortable here in the 60s. Well, you shouldn't. The society that you live in back forward in the teens has been shaped by people who were shaped by the 60s. Okay. So why are we here? Well, we're here partly so you can enjoy the music. Oh, look, there's Janis Joplin. Hi, Janis. Anyway, the thing is, it's Jimi Hendrix. It's great. Anyway, thing is that this is where foul language became acceptable in normal speech. But you know what? It stank. But next to the people that now own you, you know who the other big popularizer of foul language was? What? Who? We got to step forward now into the 70s. And I'm sorry to do this because the music's going downhill. The fashions are going to get bad. Cuban heels, double knit, flared trousers. Sorry about that. Anyway, we're in the 70s. You're not going to talk. Are you going to say Nixon? I'm going to say Nixon. I thought that was under wraps, though. I thought that was like a dirty little secret that not everyone. Well, it was a dirty little secret. That was the point, and nobody knew. Yeah. Until Watergate and the Nixon tapes. And these bloody things were read every night into the homes of America. Oh. And every other sentence seemed to have expletive deleted in it. That was how it was done. Well, then you'll have to tell the expletive deleted that blah, 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 blah. It was a great shock to America at the time to realize that the President of the United States, we still said it all in capitals in those days, the President of the United States had a potty mouth, just like some ignoramus out on the street selling pot. There's always been foul language, but it wasn't done in, shall we say, decent company. What President Nixon showed us is that decent company no longer existed.
Oh, he came from California. He came from the great city of Whittier.
And he was a Quaker.
A devout Quaker?
No, he was expelled going into World War I, or World War II, rather. World War I. It's all, I'm breaking down all the barriers in my mind. It's all the same war. And in any case, polls show that most American college students don't know that there's a difference between the two world wars anyway. So I don't want to stand out from the crowd. At any rate, don't use foul language. You've got to school yourself because you've been trained to. Don't do it. It's a counter-revolutionary act to stop using foul language. Or if you must use it in completely inappropriate ways. In the confessional, for instance. Try it there. See what happens. No, yeah, you wouldn't believe it, Father, so I'm doing this effing... Excuse me, son, what did you say? No, go ahead, try it, see what happens. One of the ways you can combat the use of foul language is just start laughing whenever it's used.
Right.
When someone tells you to F off, if you start laughing, that's not the reaction they're looking for.
You know, I heard such an interesting innovation from a popular figure, I guess, in terms of Catholic apologists. A recent convert, Stephanie Nicholas.
Yes.
She said she had the most interesting innovation when it came to someone taking Christ's name in vain. She says whenever someone says that, say in the most pleasant way possible, "Blessed be His holy name," and then that shuts that down, right? I thought, wow, that is such. I have to try that.
You know who used to do that?
Who?
The inimitable, the ancient Brother Leonard Mary.
Wow. Oh, so that's been a long time thing then.
Oh yeah, it's a long time thing. He would do it in movie theaters. We went to see a film. How
do people act when he says that?
I don't know. It was dark. It was a movie theater, but I'd hear him.
Wait, so people were cursing in the were
in the films?
Oh! He would say it to the movie?
Yeah, they'd be on screen.
Okay.
As I said, I don't know what the reactions of the people around us were. I don't think the actors had any reaction at all because they actually weren't really there.
Oh man.
You do it with television too, but that didn't have quite the same impact.
Wow, but okay, so yeah, be a counter-revolutionary. You have a couple counter-revolutionary traits to go along with that. You do formal attire. That's another.
Yes.
You know, don't do the ripped jeans and all this casual stuff. The formal attire.
No.
Another social media post you made. It was about use the United States plural.
That's correct.
These United States.
These United States. The United States are.
Yeah.
The United States are a wonderful country in which to live.
And obviously, you have a I don't know how to adequately characterize your spelling. It's not simply British. It's not simply old-timey British, is it? How would you characterize that?
It's not old-time. It's standard. British, Canadian, Australian, New Zealand. Everywhere but us.
They still do TO/ or hyphen day for today?
Actually, they have fallen, I'm sad to say.
See, that's what I'm saying. You do things that they don't even do anymore.
That's correct. It's just a little way of saying...
Exactly, yeah. That was such a... I only had that revelation about you several years ago, that your whole entire thing is kind of a... Yeah, it's doing that to everybody.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, you gotta understand, I live in a world ruled by foul-mouthed morons, but they do rule it. So what can I do but...
And also, I guess the last thing I should mention, even though I don't do it and I don't condone it, is smoking pipes.
Well, indeed. Oh, I don't do it much either. You know,
Yeah.
here in my palatial student flat, I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to.
Yeah. But you still do it as a, screw you to the man.
Well, not only that, it also lacks the health problems that cigarettes do. So it's a double pleasure.
Yeah, oh yeah, so much better. Mouth cancer is just so much more doable than lung
It's a
cancer.
lot rarer.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's much rarer. And I'll tell you something, smart guy. The WHO, the World Health Organization of the United Nations,
Dude.
came up with an interesting factoid.
Okay.
They did a worldwide survey, and what they wanted to compare were life expectancies of smokers, cigarette smokers versus pipe smokers versus non-smokers. Here's what they found out, and I have to admit, when I read this, I questioned why it was, but I'll explain in a moment. The first thing they found out, which was no great surprise, was that the life expectancy of non-smokers is greater than that of cigarette smokers. Big shock. But they found out that the average life expectancy of pipe smokers is longer than that of non-smokers.
Well, sample size. Such a small sample size. Standard deviation is going to be
It was
high
a
on that one.
worldwide size. This is the World Health Organization,
I don't know, Charles.
not the county health in LA.
I don't know. A couple Tolkien fans. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. But I have to admit that I myself thought that's really weird. I mean, I could see them being better than cigarette smokers. That's obvious. But because pipe tobacco doesn't have the chemicals and so on that they put in the cigarettes. And of course, the taste is a lot better. I mean, people smoke a pipe for the taste. Nobody smokes cigarettes because they like the taste. But here's the thing. I thought to myself, why would pipe smokers on the average live longer than non-smokers? Why is that? And then it came to me. What is the biggest factor in most of the things that kill people early today?
What?
Stress.
No, absolutely. There's a similar test too, in terms of longevity. People over 90, it's not the health fanatics. It's people who have a little alcohol. Not like, abusing.
But, they're not boozing it up all night.
No, it's like the old time, where it's like just a glass of wine or something like that. They take it easy. But they're still mindful. They're still mindful, but they're, So I thought that was interesting.
And similarly, I mean, I could tell you that pipe smoking is a tremendous stress reliever. And I do not know a single pipe smoker that gets that agitated over anything for any length of time.
Yeah.
Because the minute you light up, it's not a high. It's hard to explain. But just the ritual of tapping the pipe with the tobacco, lighting up, and of course you don't inhale. That's the other thing. I mean, I guess some people do, but I don't know many pipe smokers who inhale.
Yeah.
Because it's not the kind of smoke you really want to pull into your lungs. So all of that being said, and by the way, one other thing I should mention about secondhand smoke.
Yeah.
Pipe smokers create their own secondhand smoke.
Right.
Which they're constantly breathing in.
Yeah.
Doesn't affect their mortality rate.
Okay. Well.
And I pointed that out to someone as perhaps a possible refutation of the whole secondhand smoke mythos. And the response was, yeah, but you're convicted by your own words. And I said, what do you mean? Well, the secondhand smoke they're sucking in is pipe tobacco smoke. It's not cigarette tobacco smoke. So it doesn't have the chemicals in cigarette tobacco anyway. So that doesn't prove anything. So, all right.
Okay. Yeah. No, I know Father Ripperger is sort of famous for being a pipe smoker too. Avid pipe smoker. I think he's done videos on it. I haven't watched them yet, but yeah.
Actually, he smokes incense.
What?
drives the devils away.
Oh, of course, of course.
No, that's not true. Don't be silly. Who comes up with this nonsense? Who does your material?
I don't know.
That was an awful gag. It wasn't true.
Yeah.
Well, but we got other stuff going on. It is the month of June, and you know what that means.
Yeah, it's Sacred Heart Month.
It sure is. It is the month of the Sacred Heart, and although I'm sorry to say, ladies and gentlemen, that you will have missed it unless you're one of the special people who pay extra and get this thing early. Remember that this coming Friday is the first Friday of the month in honor of the Sacred Heart, in the month of the Sacred Heart. So you want to go to Mass, get some adoration in, renew your consecration of the Sacred Heart, and even if you're seeing this on Monday, so you missed out on this past First Friday, you could do it in July. But you might consider, this being the month of the Sacred Heart, you might consider having the enthronement of the Sacred Heart in your house. That is an image of the Sacred Heart formally set up by the priest with various blessings and prayers and so forth. Enthronement of the Sacred Heart is a particular practice. You can look it up online. And it's a very wonderful thing to do.
How common is it? For our family? We had it like 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Is it still relatively common, or is that hard?
No, it's still relatively common.
Okay.
I'm sure if your parish priest won't do it, I'm sure there's a decent parish that will.
Okay.
Knowing your parish as I do, I'm sure they would do it, except you've already had it done, so.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But that's a very, very important thing. There is, however, something else coming up. Now, mind you, we're going to be reconvening before then, but don't forget that June 24th is the Feast of St. John the Baptist.
And don't forget St. John's Eve, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Not just St. John's Eve, though, Halloween and summer, but also, very important, the Feast of St. John the Baptist is for the French Canadians like St. Patrick's Day for the Irish. It's the day of the year that everyone wishes they were French Canadian.
Yeah, what do you guys have? The poutine, or what is
Poutine.
that? Yeah, poutine. Yeah.
Poutine. Oh, it's good stuff. Health food.
Yeah, big time health food. Yep.
Yeah, a ton of fries covered with brown gravy and cheese and maybe chopped up meat, other stuff. Yeah, it's health food. Stuff will clean out your arteries.
That's for sure.
See, the artery is like a muscle. You got to exercise it, and poutine is kind of like heavy weights.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor. I like that one, Charles.
So, no, but June 2, the other thing that's coming up, July the 1st, of course, will be 3 major feast days. July the 1st is, in the old calendar, the Feast of the Precious Blood, and it's deeply connected to the Feast of the Sacred Heart, as you can imagine, which is also coming up this month. But more than that, and by the way, you're going to be seeing this on Whit Monday, Pentecost Monday.
Okay.
So if you can get to Mass, do. But Feast of the Precious Blood, July 1st. The Feast of St. Junipero Serra,
Ooh.
July 1st, for all you Californian dudes and dudettes. And thirdly, it's Dominion Day.
What is that again?
Dominion Day.
No, I know, but what is that?
Oh, it is the National Day of Canada, the Dominion of Canada, the signing of the British North America Act that brought the Grand Dominion to our north into existence.
Oh, well, I mean, come on. I'm American. I can't be hassled with such things.
Yeah, you can. And it's also the day my father died.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Of your charity, although I'm sure we'll be reminding you later, of your charity on the 1st of July, remember to pray for the soul of Guy Joseph Conrad Coulombe, my late father. So, that is where we are with, we've got St. Anne's Day in June, I think, or is it July? Anyway, we've got a lot of feasts coming up in the summer.
Yeah. Okay, a couple things before we really get started. A lot of people wonder what Tumblr House is. Tumblr House is a publisher of fine Catholic books, and we're also an online bookstore. We sell books from many other fine Catholic publishers: Ignatius Press, Sophia Institute Press, Tan Books, Baronius Press, Mediatrix Press, a lot of different presses. Ascensus Traditionis Press, which is Father Ripperger's. We love the spiritual classics. We love history, and all that good stuff. So check us out at tumblrhouse.com. We have I think we're like at over 700 books in our bookstore right now. And if you're specifically buying books published by Tumblr House, all our books are there's no place cheaper to get them than tumblrhouse.com. Free shipping on orders over $25. So head over there. If you're a fan of the show, it makes good sense to become a patron. We've asked all patron questions so far, other than, we had one last week, actually, which was a little esoteric, so I didn't ask it on the show. I actually gave the gentleman a private video. So we do that. You get special benefits as a patron, and for as little as $1 a month. We're $200 away from our next goal right now, which would get us to 3 shows per month instead of just 2. So we're $200 away from that increase. So head on over to Patreon if your generosity is much appreciated. And that'll do it for. Oh, and don't. One of our fans always wants me to remind everybody, it's just like our videos. Click that like button. It has a huge impact in terms of getting more exposure for the show. So I'll try to bring that up every show to get you guys in the routine. Okay, let's get started. First question actually is from me, kind of as touching on against the foul mouth thing that it spurred into my mind, which is, so my question is, if you had the power to remove any words from the dictionary, what words would you remove? Basically erasing them from existence.
Oof. Well, all the 4-letter words that should be in the dictionary anyway, they'd all be gone.
Okay.
So, let me see. Actually, we were having this discussion before. I don't remember. There was one that really that was all over my head. Do you remember what I said?
I do. I have one word in mind. Well, you said chauvinist.
Oh, yes. Chauvinist needs to go.
But isn't it a word for an inherent reality that some people suffer from?
No. It's an enabling word for self-delusive people. My first encounter with chauvinist, the word chauvinist, I was 12 or 13 years old. It was 1972. This is going down memory lane again, but you don't have to come with me. I'll tell the story.
Yeah.
What should happen? But then I'm on the bus. Now, in those days, not only were we not supposed to use foul language, but if there was nowhere to sit on a bus and a lady was standing, the well-behaved young man stood up and offered her a seat. That was the way it was done, you see, back when we could control our mouths. So there was the whole place was full, but there was no one standing. The whole bus that I was on. Bus stops. Girl gets on. She must have been, in retrospect, early 20s. So, like a well-behaved, well-brought-up young lad, I stood up and offered her my seat. She let loose on me. She called me a chauvinist, blah, 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 blah. So I looked at her, and I sat down, and I said, "I'm very sorry, sir. I didn't realize you were in drag."
Wow. So you were 11 when you said that?
Yeah, 12 or 13.
Wow, that was sharp.
Everybody laughed, and she turned bright red.
Well, what did you say earlier in the show? Give them what they want, good and hard?
That's right.
That was some of that right there. Woo!
So that was my first encounter with the word chauvinist. I'll never forget the look on her face and the guffaws and laughter.
That's pretty sweet, Charles.
Well, why do they have to have it always their own way? Why do they have to be the ones who just... Why can't we give them their own good and hard? Why can't we tell people who don't want us to use their titles? Why don't we just call them Bobby Joe or Moron or whatever their names are? Why not? It's what they're asking for. And I know in the case of the cardinal that doesn't want priests to be called father. I'm sure he doesn't want people to give clergy money, because that would imply a difference. Yeah. If you live in Cardinal Dew's diocese, you probably shouldn't be giving him any money, because he would feel bad taking it.
Yeah, inequality.
Yeah, he would feel very bad.
Yeah.
So, at any rate, chauvinism definitely would go out the window. Let me see. What's another word? Well, safe space.
Okay.
Well, that's not really in the dictionary yet, but it's getting there.
You don't like safe spaces?
Not really. Although I've created one my here for myself. LGBTQMXMZLMDZ.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
That one needs to go bye-bye. I know, right? I know, right? That phrase has to go. It's a neologism.
Oh, that's a big one over in California. That's
of course it is. Be countercultural. I even remember when it started up. And it wasn't that long ago. It was like 15 years, maybe, if that. 10, maybe.
I know, right?
I hate that. Issues. That's another one. Oh, I've got issues. No, you don't. You're not a subscribing paper. You may have problems. You may have challenges. You don't have issues.
Okay.
I remember when that one came in. That's got to go. We're heaving that one out the door. Actually, I put my thought to it. There's a lot of words.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Of course.
I mean, there's a lot of words that from the human potential movement I could do that. Feedback could go. Input. Unless you're working with a computer, stop it. Stop it. If you're working with a computer in the technical terms, I would get rid of gay as a noun.
Okay.
And its use as a verb would be restored to its original meaning.
Gay as a verb? Wait, what?
I mean, gay as an adjective, rather, my mistake. Gay as an adjective would be returned to its original meaning.
Oh, yeah, happy.
Yeah. I can remember when it was still used for that. Because, to tell you the truth, I would get rid of any word that turns behavior into a quasi-ethnic group.
Behavior into... Okay.
So, I mean, why don't we have adulterous Americans, known as easies? Yeah, I'm an easy. And, right now I'm majoring in easy studies in university. I'm doing my doctorate in easy studies. See, we easies, what?
Okay. Does feminism fit in that camp? Feminism? Is that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Removing the word feminist, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. I'd keep feminine.
Yeah.
But I get rid of feminist.
Yeah.
Unless they want to have masculinists.
Okay.
Now, if you want to have masculinists and masculinism, then we can keep feminists and feminism. Otherwise, out the door with the rest of it.
I'm waiting for a particular word from you, which is
okay, what word? Don't keep me in suspense. I'm
surprised we haven't gotten to this word, but the word is Austrofascist.
Oh, Austrofascist.
I mean, this is my go-to word to trigger you. I mean, it's like, okay,
yes,
I really want to trigger Charles right now, so okay, let's click that button.
Not just Austrofascist, though.
Oh yeah,
Islamofascist.
Romano-fascist. Yeah, a lot of
Anything
yeah.
that just connects the quality you don't like, and your little nasty little shortcut of escaping thought or really knowing anything, you know. I mean, you're a Coulombe-fascist. You feel everyone has to eat just to be able to stay alive. What? Oh yeah, you Coulombe-fascists are all the same. You insist that, people have to have 3 squares a day at least or they'll starve. What do you know? Using fascist in that sense is a moronic shortcut. Don't do it. Austrofascist and all the other fascist goes out the go. You can say radical Islam if you want. You could say radical Austrians. You could say radical anything you want. You could describe what they actually believed. Oh, but you'd have to find out what that was. Well, you're right, ladies and gentlemen. I have to admit, what I hate are buzzwords. Words that allow you to escape engaging ideas. Words that allow you to shut down discussion with a mere toss of a phrase. I hate that.
Okay.
Anyway, all of these umbrella terms that we use to escape engagement with ideas. Now, you might think, well, I know that's evil. I don't want to engage with it. Okay, don't. Don't. Shut up about it. If it's not worth researching, it's not worth discussing. If it's not worth knowing about, it's not worth having an opinion on. So just stop. Just don't. You've got a life. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to know everything. And you don't have to open your mouth about everything. Just the stuff you really know something about. But contrariwise, if you do want to open your mouth about something, well then take the time and find out about it. If you don't want to take your time, don't open your mouth. See, it's simple. Either learn and express yourself, or don't learn and shut up. Simple. Anyway, what else we got?
Okay, let's start with some questions from the people. Right, first question is from Nicholas Williams. Mr. Coulombe, would you please talk about the Agatha Christi Indult and the traditional mass in the United Kingdom? Has it been gaining ground like in the United States? As far as other countries go, I have heard that the faithful in South America and Mexico are not as attached to the old mass as we are. Would you say that is the case?
Well, there are 2 separate questions, so we'll answer one after the other. The first is the Agatha Christi Indult. One of the things people forget about the traditional Mass of the Catholic Church is that it was a huge part of Western civilization. A lot of our literature, our poetry, our art, our architecture centers around it. You know Notre Dame, that big church that just burned?
Yeah, I heard of it.
Well, that was built to house the traditional Mass. It wasn't built for the new Mass.
Really?
Yeah, I know, it's a shock. So, in fact, nothing built before 1970 was built to house the new Mass. So, it's a big part of Western culture. So when Pope Paul VI, that great aesthete and purveyor of bad taste, decided to get rid of it, a group of English, mostly non-Catholic artists and writers, spearheaded, put together by none other than Agatha Christie, the famous mystery writer, approached him. Now, mind you, other people had approached him, asking for the traditional Mass to be permitted. But they were merely Catholics. And as we know from constant experience during and since Paul VI's reign, the desires, wishes, opinions of Catholics rarely mean much to those in power in the church. But here you had a group of very important non-Catholics asking not for religious reasons, which wouldn't make any sense, but cultural reasons, for the old Mass to be permitted in England. And as it so happened, Paul VI was a fan of Mrs. Christie's very wonderful, as am I, of her wonderful mystery novels. So he granted the permission for England, because he'd been asked to do so by important non-Catholics who mattered, as opposed to his mere flock with whom he could do whatever he liked, and to which he did whatever he liked, as has been the custom ever since. That was the Agatha Christi Indult. Yes, the traditional Mass is growing in England as it is here, and amongst the young as it is here. As far as Latin America goes, and other places, a lot depends on the hierarchy. And the hierarchy in Latin countries tend to be, they're not all, but they tend to be very anti-Tridentine, and sometimes outspokenly. I mean, you've had a few Latin American and Italian bishops forbid the traditional Mass in response to Benedict XVI's motu proprio. Wow. See, prelates like that are schismatics. They should have been deposed. They should have been, out looking for work on the highway. But a lot of bishops should be looking for work on the highway. No, not street walking. That's not what I said. Looking for work on the highway. Honestly.
Okay. That didn't even register in my mind. Okay.
Yeah. That's your story, pal. I know what you were thinking.
Okay.
Just because they have certain talents doesn't mean they should make money off them.
So why would the non-Catholics care about them? I mean, are they actually going to the Mass? Why would they care?
Because they cared for Western culture. And because the traditional Mass brought you music, Palestrina. I mean, gosh, Mozart. It's at the center of Western culture. So even if they didn't attend it very often, they wanted it to be available and to continue to inform Western culture.
That's so weird.
Yeah, but you know what? It made more sense to Paul VI than it feeds our souls.
Okay. All right, but I like that your blood's up. That makes for a good episode. Get your blood going. Get
Paul VI always had that effect on me. I can remember when I was 8 years old, and he came out and said, because he was always turning around and saying something. He came out and said, "Perhaps you are not called upon to rule the church. Perhaps you are called simply to suffer for." And I remember thinking, well, if you're not called on to rule the church, who the devil is? Why don't you get a job? That was my first thought at 8 years old. Because at the time, of course, I was kind of bitter. It was the middle of the IHM lesbian episode. And, the Pope was backing them.
Yeah.
I have to say that there's only one thing Catholicism has to offer for itself.
What?
That the religion is true. But if my faith depended upon the clerics that run the church, let's just say I understand why most of my age group left.
Yeah.
But having said that, the greater sin lies with those who drove them out.
Okay. By the way, I forgot in the introduction. So we're done with that question. A shameless plug for Puritan's Empire.
Oh. Now I'm happy again.
Yeah, Tom Balistrieri on Twitter says it's got so many red pills. It's like eating a bowl of M&Ms.
A bowl of red pills like M&Ms.
Yeah, there's so many red pills in here. It's like a bowl of M&Ms. Wow.
That's amazing. As the late Yule Hauser used to say. Oh, now I am chilling. Just thinking of Yule Hauser, I want to relax and see local California curiosities again. All right, I'm better now.
Good. Well,
My blood
actually,
is.
I don't
What's
know if
that?
that's good. Well, I'll have to work on getting your blood up again. Okay, let's
Just
see.
mention Paul VI, and that'll do it.
Okay. Okay. Next question is from Joshua.
Yep.
Greetings, baby boomer and grandpa millennial.
Yeah.
Yay. With the hot days of summer now quickly approaching, I thought I would ask a relevant question concerning a potentially controversial topic.
I'll bet.
Namely that of modesty in the context of public bathing. Over the centuries, has the church held a consistent stance concerning modesty, especially with regards to women when swimming in public? From what I've been led to understand, our medieval ancestors didn't really give it too much thought. If it was hot out and they came across a lake or river or any body of nice cool water, they would simply throw off their clothes and jump in. Obviously, nowadays that would be considered a little cray-cray, especially in mixed company. On the other hand, there are some Catholics who would have you think that women should dress for swimming pretty much the same way they dress for Sunday Mass, which doesn't really sound right either. So, according to church teaching, what exactly constitutes modesty with regards to women's attire when visiting public beaches, pools, lakes, etc.? Help me out, Charles. My wife Vita would really like to know. She's a big fan, by the way, and sends you both her regards.
Well, that's talk about a difficult question. Well, firstly, two things I'll say straight out. One is, no woman should get into the pool wearing what she wears to go to mass. She will drown. There's just too much clothing.
A little hyperbolic, but okay.
Well, I'm just saying. Secondly, as one sees regularly in California, with a lot of ladies, less is more. Just putting that out there. Less is more.
Okay.
You don't. I mean, if remember aesthetics, ladies, guys too. Don't. I mean, I don't think that someone with my build really adds to the aesthetics of a setup. But having said that, this is an issue that people debate constantly, and I really cannot give you an authoritative answer, because I don't know. If anyone in our studio audience has access to some sort of authoritative church teaching on standards in bathing dress, please feel free to share. In lieu of that, I could just say that if it were me, and a question of my women folk, my wife and daughters, I probably would not want them in bikinis. I think a one-piece would be good. But that's just me.
Sounds reasonable. But I'm sure there's going to be some people saying, you're advocating for immodesty, Charles. I know.
Good.
I'm 100%. 100%.
Show me some authoritative teaching, and I will go along with it.
Okay.
Specifics, mind you.
Specifics?
Yes, like some sort of decree from 1932 or something.
Okay. Okay, next question is from Andrew. The Catholic Church is responsible for some of the most glorious music to ever grace the ears of men, yet, to my knowledge, none of her composers, save for Hildegard von Bingen, have achieved the rank of canonized saint. I have studied music history extensively, yet I cannot find an example of a composer of sacred polyphony being canonized, and I likewise cannot find evidence of them living particularly sinful lives. Have causes for canonization been open for men like Josquin des Prés, Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina, and William Byrd, the later of which risked martyrdom by composing for the church in England during the penal times?
He sure did. The answer is, I don't know. I don't think so. As to the whys, the wherefores, why does anyone get beatified or canonized? Why do causes get started? Somebody pushes, and they meet the criteria, and there you are. I couldn't tell you why. I can tell you that although he was a painter, Fra Angelica was beatified. So I think that part of the problem, I suppose, is that you've got to prove that they lived a life of heroic virtue, and that's really tough, especially the further back you go in time. But I really don't have an authoritative answer for you.
Okay.
Except that I don't know of any. And that doesn't mean there aren't any. It just means I don't know any.
Okay. Next question. How do we identify people who legitimately have powers given to them by Satan and evil forces, modern day witches and sorcerers, in the modern world who actually have these powers? Does the church have any modern ways of warding them off or identifying them? I know different cultures in the church have a lot, but are there any universal ones approved of in the modern church?
Well, yeah. I mean, the sacramentals, holy water, say Benedict medals, scapulars, things like that, miraculous medals, all have a power over these things to a greater or lesser degree. As far as people with demonic influence, demonic power, which is in the literal sense, not Wiccans dancing under the moonlight to honor Mother Gaia. Not really. I mean, dunking doesn't help. The
Dunking? Wait,
witches
what?
dunking. Well, that
Wait,
was what they used to do in the old days. They dunk witches. If they floated, then they were a witch and had to be executed. If they sank and drowned, then they weren't witches.
uh, so it's lose-lose. So
Yeah,
basically, you're dead.
yeah. That's probably why the church didn't use those didn't use those measures, but they were very popular at the time
Okay.
in the Protestant countries. England, in particular, used the dunking test. The church used what was called the Maleus Maleficarum, the hammer of witches, which goes into great detail about the marks whereby you could recognize Satan's agents. But I'll tell you, if anybody had all those marks, I'd set the kindling to their stake myself because they're pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think Satan really operates that way too much these days.
Right.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying that there isn't witchcraft of the classical sort being practiced. I'm not saying that at all. But I don't think it is his primary means of attack at the moment.
It reminds me of a famous movie line. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
That's very true. It's very true. So, we'll mind you, there's still possessions and this kind of thing, both of people and places. There's all sorts of stuff still going on. But the great disbelief in the power of the devil is much more to his advantage. He doesn't want publicity.
Yeah.
He wants acceptance.
Right.
And so, many of the things that we take for granted today are demonic or satanic with a small d or a small s. And to give you an example of what I mean, you may remember Blessed Anna Catherine Emmerich, the visionary.
Of course, I've read all of her stuff.
Well, she had a vision of people watching boxes out of which the devil spoke.
Yes.
Now, stop for a second. You've got a little nun in early 19th century Germany who's not that well traveled anyway. And she gets a vision of a modern American family staring at, I don't know, Game of Thrones or something. And there's no narration. There's no explanation. She just sees it.
Yeah.
What do you think she's going to think?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And in a larger sense, is she wrong?
Not wrong.
No. It's just that we don't recognize the demonic and the satanic. I mean, when you have all this rap music urging rape, you've got Lady Gaga, who, by the way, did say that she herself had dealt with Satanism. As a good convent girl, I guess she didn't really have a choice. You listen to the lyrics that people are pushing. You look at look at the infanticide. You know, the Dr. Taylor Marshall released on Twitter this horrific thing of attendants at an abortion mill playing with the little fetal corpses. What's that?
Yeah.
So, I would say that all the traditional stuff that the devil has ever done, he still does. But that's not the center of gravity in his struggle to destroy us.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it kind of reminds me of Father Ripperger and his thing, because he points out, possession is one way, and the rare way in which the devil influences people. You also have obsession. Oh my goodness, I forgot. Temptation, obsession, and oppression.
Yeah,
and which are far more frequent. Yeah, temptation being obviously the most frequent.
It's the most frequent. We all succumb to it. It's easy. It's there. And one of the ways you could tell that a temptation comes from the devil rather than your own wicked self is if it's
out of nowhere.
Yeah, just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You're minding your own business. You're busy with something else, and suddenly, boom, and you're like, "What? Huh? Where'd that come from?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I was given a very interesting piece of advice, speaking of temptation, by a priest at the confessional a couple of weeks ago. And I'm going to share it here on international television.
Okay.
If you're worried about sins against purity of thought and that kind of thing, before you go to bed every night, and when you wake up, say 3 Hail Marys to the Immaculata for purity.
And that's it. That's That's
it.
That's it. It's that simple. Then you never experience that temptation again.
It lessens tremendously.
Okay, 3 Hail Marys when you wake up, 3 Hail Marys when you go to bed. Specifically with that purpose, to the Immaculata.
Right.
Wow. Well, sounds great, Charles.
Been very effective so far.
Good. Well, for everyone out there, let's try that one.
Yeah. You may find yourself missing your temptations, ladies and gentlemen. And if you do, it just shows you the power of habit.
Missing those temptations. Gosh.
People are funny. People are funny.
Okay. All right, next question is from Joel. Dear Mr. Coulombe, I've been told at a number of feasts and holidays we celebrate during the church year, we should not just focus on what they memorialize. They are past events. They say we should look more to our present time. We should use today to be ready for the coming of Jesus in our lives. Am I right in being concerned with this tendency toward downgrading the life of our Lord? That somehow we could deify our Lord and Savior too much? I am also told that we shouldn't spend all our time in the church building where it's safe and comfy, but out in the real world. Am I missing something?
Not nearly as much as whoever's telling you this nonsense. If it's coming out of the parish priest, I would suggest you don't spend any more time in that particular comfy church.
Yeah,
go to another parish.
Yeah, we were speaking about signs of demonic.
Yeah, that that
there is
I
one.
mean, I would definitely give that priest what he wants, good and hard, and say goodbye. He'll never see you again. The fact of the matter is, everything you've just told me is the rankest nonsense. And whoever's mouth it's coming out of, whether it be a priest or a layman or a laywoman or an old lady or Susan from the parish council or whoever it is, they're wrong. Completely, totally.
Well, it's not only that they're wrong; it's that it is impossible to not be a hypocrite in the worst way, because they're celebrating something. I don't care.
Yeah, the collection.
They better not be celebrating Christmas.
No, they're celebrating the collection.
Oh, the collection?
Yes, the collection is a big thing. It's very celebrated.
It's important.
And probably Stewardship Sunday.
What is Stewardship Sunday?
Stewardship Sunday in the Archdiocese of LA is the annual really putting out the hand for dough Sunday. Every priest in the given diocese is supposed to talk about how wonderful it is to give money to the wonderful work of the church. And very often it's the only time you'll ever hear the church fathers quoted about the need to support the church financially. Stewardship Sunday. So my joke is that in those dioceses where Ascension Thursday has been replaced by Ascension Sunday, they've moved Stewardship Sunday onto the Thursday to, to make up for it.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, I mean, that's just drivel. The worst kind of drivel. It's insulting to Christ. It's insulting to you. Those are not, by the way, just so you know, the feasts of the church are not past events. It is Christmas. It is Easter. It is Pentecost. Is. The totality of them make up the eternal now that is the life of Christ. And when you celebrate them, you're simply plugging into something that's eternal. The same as when you receive communion. You're when you're at Mass, and especially when you receive, you're at once united with the transubstantiation at the Last Supper, the sacrifice on Calvary, and every valid Mass that ever has been said, is being said, or will be said. You're plugging into an ongoing reality. And the same is true with each of the feasts of the church. And this person, or whatever it is that gave you this drivel, has no business being allowed to speak in public in a church. But I would take their advice and leave that particular church and go to another parish where they're, a little saner.
Yeah, get out of your comfort zone. Go in the real world. Yeah.
No, get out of that person's comfort zone and get into yours. That person is comfortable. You're not. So, bye-bye. You don't need my money. Bye-bye.
Okay. Next question is from Anthony.
Yes.
Why are Catholics often accused of anti-Semitism? I seem to hear this fairly often from evangelical circles, and I don't understand the foundation for it. Would you please explain?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my symbol for pointless babble. Anti-Semitism. Why is the church accused of anti-Semitism? Well, there are several reasons why this is the case. First, remember, evangelical preachers are keen to attack the church for any reason whatsoever. Also, bear in mind something important. They equate the Jewish people of today radically with the kingdom of Israel. So defending the state of Israel that we see today is, for some of them, not all, a religious duty. Now, for the Catholic Church, she is the inheritrix of the kingdom of Israel. She is the new Israel. She is the successor to the temple. Her sacraments are the successor to the old sacrifices, which were only foreshadowings. She is the fulfillment of the old law. Now, as a result, the church has always wanted to enfold all of our older brethren. As Pius XI said, we are spiritually Semites. into the church. But, as you can imagine, there has always been a bit of friction between Jews and the Catholic Church, because they both claim the same thing, to be the successor, the holder of the promise, the holder of the covenant. Now I'm gonna ask you a trick question. You'll often heard it say that the church in Spain killed lots of Jews. All right. How many Jews were executed by the Inquisition?
I don't know, 100.
No.
Higher or lower?
Lower.
Okay, 20.
No.
1.
No.
0.
Right. The reason is that the Inquisition only had jurisdiction over Catholics. Didn't have any jurisdiction over non-Catholics. So Jews were not subject to the Inquisition. However, Jews who converted fraudulently, they were. Now, not all Jews of that era converted fraudulently. St. Teresa of Avila's family were Jewish and very devout. But some were. And not only were they, some of those who were conspired with the enemies of Spain, like England and the Turks, to the detriment of the Spanish kingdom. And said people, if they were converts, the Inquisition would indeed deal with them. But that's where once comes the often stated lie. The Spanish Inquisition executed Jews. No, they executed false converts who had been conspiring with enemies of Spain. There isn't a country on earth where people who commit treason actually do well. It's almost like saying the N-word. Almost that bad. So,
okay, thank you for that interpretation. Yeah, now I understand.
Well,
almost like as bad as
I needed to make it easily understandable to modern people.
Definitely. Wow, that's horrible then, Charles. Wow, that's the worst.
That's the worst. It couldn't be worse.
It could be.
Now, certainly the church is keen on every single Jewish man, woman, and child alive today coming into the Catholic Church. Absolutely. Which St. Paul says will happen eventually, sooner or later. The downside is that it means that the end of the world isn't too far off when that happens. But anyway. Now, because of all of this, the Catholic Church was very slow to recognize the independence of the State of Israel. What they had hoped for, what the Holy See had hoped for in the 40s, was that Palestine would become an international state where all of its inhabitants could live freely and where the holy places would be preserved safely. That was the hope. But then, in 1948, you had the partition of Palestine, and you had the driving out of a lot of Palestinians to their ancestral areas. And a lot of these Palestinians were Catholics. A lot of them weren't, but a lot of them were. So that, of course, did not, at the time, make the Holy See very friendly to Israel. In fact, a rapprochement did not really come around until the reign of Pope John Paul II. Paul VI began a little bit, but John Paul II in particular. And of course, he had a particular interest in this because, having been in the resistance against the Germans in World War II, he was particularly sensitive, shall we say, to the persecutions that the Jews had underwent at the hands of the Nazis, because they persecuted the Poles the same way, at the same time, in the same place. That having been said, the negotiations between the Holy See and Israel for settlement of their relationship have not been successfully concluded, because the State of Israel has balked at several points that the Holy See has always wanted, like the holy places having a extraterritorial independence the way the Vatican does. And Israel is not keen on giving up its sovereignty over the holy places. So that's why.
Okay. There, even saints aren't immune to that ridicule. I know that term gets thrown at Saint Vincent Ferrer, even. Because he baptized so many Jews, he converted and baptized so many Jews.
I
Obviously, he hated them. Obviously, it's because he hated them, right? I mean, clearly. I mean, that's
you
why.
want people to join your family because you hate them. That it all makes sense if you don't pay close attention.
Yeah.
You know, I think that if the modern age has any abiding sin, it's certainly not lust. No. I mean, that flows out of what its abiding sin really is. Stupidity. Ravening, slack-jawed, drool at the corner of the mouth, stupidity. That's what we moderns are. And you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere. I mean, even papal insults. The use of language in a way that makes the user look idiotic is not a good thing. I mean, if I think, for instance, that I come up to you and I say, you know your problem, Vinny? You're a big fat dum-dum. Yeah. I actually don't think I'm insulting you as much as I'm insulting myself. Of course, it doesn't help if you turn around and say, oh yeah, well, you're another. But stupid moronic laughter, stupid moronic denigration, stupid moronic anything is the watchword of what we are as a culture these days.
No.
And that hit me very hard watching some of the tweets. You know, you're too young probably to know the comic book character Zippy the Pinhead.
No.
Well, look him up after the broadcast. Zippy the Pinhead. If there was a character that represents our society, our culture, our ethos, it is Zippy the Pinhead.
Very good. Okay, next question is from another gentleman named Vincent.
Wow.
Yeah, this is our final question today. He says, you believe in the Catholic religion. Is it rational to believe in invisible things? How can you have a relationship with something that is not perceptible to your five senses? I have read about and seen Eucharistic miracles and other signs and apparitions. Basically, what is your answer to atheism?
Well, you've actually already touched on it, which is Eucharistic miracles and these sorts of things. I mean, that's not what we base our faith on, but obviously they're giving us as signs of confirmation. More than that, however, is that if the Catholic faith is true, then all of those signs and wonders make perfect sense. If the Catholic faith is not true, if there is no God, then there's simply bizarre occurrences that have no rhyme or reason to them. So, for instance, the famous miracle of Lanciano, where the priest is offering Mass and doubts the real presence, and the bread turns to flesh and the wine to blood. What really happened? He was doubting a doctrine true, and then this suddenly happened for no reason. Your nose could turn into a carrot in that kind of universe. And yet it doesn't. So, again, looking at the totality of these things, it would take more faith not to believe in God than to believe in Him. It would take more faith when you know about these things not to believe in the Catholic Church than to believe in it. Because otherwise you're left with sheer insanity, which, again, wouldn't bother me, but a lot of people would find it hard to deal with. Atheism, I think, in a sense, is an escape from personal responsibility. Because the problem with accepting a belief in God and the problem with accepting the Catholic Church is that automatically something is required out of you. You have responsibility. You have to do things that you may not want to do. But them's the breaks, the price of admission, if you will. I would say that the atheist, the one jibe that I got at a very early age from an atheist, never forgot it, and the answer came to me immediately. He asked me, if God exists and he's all powerful, can God make a rock so heavy he couldn't lift it? And I thought and said, yes, he could, and he did. Your free will. If you ain't gonna believe no way, no how, there's nothing you can do about it. He can try to give you signs and wonders. But as it says in the Holy Bible, when Dives asked for Lazarus to be sent to warn his brothers, he said, Moses said to him, they have the law and the prophets. If they won't follow those, they would not listen even to a dead man rising. And what was that really foretelling? O shroud of Turin, O sudarium of Oviedo.
Yeah. Well, when in terms of doubters, I always think of Pharaoh. Because, I mean, he had plague after plague. It's like, okay, it wasn't just that it was unbelievable. It's that Moses said it was going to happen. Like, okay, this was going to happen. I think, right? Wait, or maybe I got that wrong.
All but the last one. And then the death of the firstborn. Too, only the firstborn.
Only the first. Yeah, oh, there we go.
I mean, that would strike you as a little odd, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then finally, I get, and he didn't even do it out of a belief. Like, he never even converted.
No.
Like, your kid just died, and Moses said that was going to happen. And then it's still, no, I ain't budging.
Nope. And then they let him go, and he tries to go after him.
So, we talked about Anne Catherine Emmerich earlier. One of the juicy insights that she had was after the resurrection, or not after the resurrection, after the crucifixion, when people the dead rose from the graves, and it was a horror show, and it was obvious.
I saw Walking Dead,
and I remember the word she used. She said there was a quote, obstinate demon in Caiaphas, because everyone was absolutely panicking from what they were seeing. Everyone they were in sheer panic. It was chaos.
The veil of the temple was ripped from top to bottom. Is it?
Yeah, but he was calm and collected, Caiaphas. He had an obstinate demon in him. Where it's like, okay. And he knew the truth. But he didn't matter. It didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
So, I these are important for me in terms of I guess managing my frustration levels with people. Where it's like, well, how could they not?
Well, and the other thing too is one can turn it back on oneself. Maybe we're that way this time or that.
It's true.
Because it's not like people in that position really examine themselves honestly. And if they're capable of being that way, so are we. And, my late father used to say that there was only one thing that made his fellow man tolerable to him. Only one.
What?
I said, what's that? The fact that I'm just like him. But if it weren't for that.
Okay. Time for the book. Our book today is from Mother Angelica, God, His Home, and His Angels.
Wow, is that not heaven?
Yes, it is. Well, she talks about the various qualities individually, like God the Father, His qualities, and sort of how they're reflected. And so she's got a lot of wonderful books. This book, I guess in the introduction they said she sat down in front of the Blessed Sacrament as she was writing this book, and it was sort of her thoughts as she was in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and you can really tell because I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it thoroughly. Do you have any thoughts on Mother Angelica? Any tidbits? Any?
Well,
insights?
yeah. I first encountered her work, oddly enough, when I was working for a company called Payco while I was going to Cal State Northridge. I was a telephone collection agent. I wasn't very good at it, but they were in Encino, and very close by to the office was St. Cyril of Jerusalem Church. So I would often go there for Mass at noon. And their pamphlet rack was filled with Mother Angelica stuff. The early stuff, was kind of crudely put out and so on. This is about 1982 or 3, something like that. So, or 81, whatever it was, 80, 1980, 81. Anyway, so that was when I first became aware of her. And of course, she didn't wear the traditional habit. They had this modified habit.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, whatever. But as the years went by and the situation in the church got crazier and crazier, she became more and more outspoken. And I will never forget when the bishops, they did something. I don't remember now what it was. But that was the weekend that she put her nuns back into the traditional habit. And on her show, she just let them have it.
Yeah.
Well, then, when our own Cardinal Mahoney had his, he wrote on about the Blessed Sacrament, and it was just codswallop. She erupted in fury on her program, and she said, "If I lived in his archdiocese, my obedience would be nil." So
he tried to shut her down.
Well, he tried very hard. It didn't work. But he did get her to apologize. But her apology was pretty much, "I'm very sorry I had to say that."
I'm sorry I had to say. I'm sorry you compelled me to say that.
Yeah, exactly. It's really, really, really a tragedy. So that I always liked that. I mean, EWTN has done a lot of good. Is it perfect? No. But what is? I mean, there's a saying which I would like all of us, trad, semi-trad, rad trad, glad trad, conservative, semi-novus ordo, pre-formal.
Don't forget the Sedevacantists.
Yes, don't forget the Sedevacantists.
They need love too.
Yes, they do, and I'm filled with it for them, for everybody. Never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Never let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
And since we're all perfect, that's relevant to...
Since we're all perfect, we're all enemies of the good. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, believe me, if you think you're perfect, you are an enemy of the good. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you be tripping, as we say.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh. But I mean, she did a lot of great work, and I wish she were perfect, but I wish I were perfect.
Yeah. No, my TV is basically a Mother Angelica show recording device. I mean, I don't record anything on my DVR other than the Mother Angelica classics.
Really?
Yeah. I just discovered that about myself. All the shows that I like are pretty much done, and that's all I record. I actually, but I like her post habit change. She got so much better with age. It was beautiful to see. I don't know what the exact word is, but she mellowed out in a beautiful way.
Well, part of it was that she gave up. See, before she did that, there was this constant strain of having to justify the change within the context of traditional teaching.
Mm.
But
Interesting.
when she just let go, embraced tradition, the strain vanished.
That's
I
a good
mean,
dissection. I like that.
well, I mean, it just became a lot easier. Because look, this is a woman who was trained to love her habit. She gave it up out of obedience. She didn't want to. And then she finally realized that that was a dead end. And so she was able to go back to it.
Mm.
But again, think of how horrible the people were that demanded that out of her, out of nuns.
Yeah.
Think of what evil people they were to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, it, you know, it seems to me the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And there's another one, which is if it is not absolutely necessary to change, then it is absolutely necessary not to change. The sheer hubris of people who could come into a situation without really understanding it or knowing it and decide that they could completely reorganize it according to themselves, meaning that they themselves were the summum bonum. We know better. Oh, really? Really? How'd you manage that one, big guy? How'd you get so smart, smarter than generations that came before you? How'd you do that? I know you're brilliant. I take that. I accept it. You're brilliant. Everybody else was wrong. I get it. So how'd that happen? Did you take a magic blue pill? Did the fairies wave their wands? Uh, Mustard enemas? What did you do? I don't know. How did you become so perfect? And the response, of course, would be, I am prelate. You are layman. Or to put it another way, I am Oz, the great and powerful. I am Charles, the bemused and annoyed. As opposed to Dorothy, the swallow weak.
Yes.
I mean, I'm pretty weak too, but I'm pretty bemused and annoyed. And becucked, as I've been told.
Becucked. Yeah.
Becucked.
Um.
Yeah, I like being a cuck. It's freeing. It's liberating.
How so?
I don't feel the necessity to keep up with the Trumps or anybody else. I'm a cuck. I'm a softie.
Okay. Well, great.
I've always been a softie. You know that. I just.
When it comes to certain things.
I'm a softie. I'm a total cuck. I just, yeah.
You're pretty hard on Trump.
Oh, the Trumpster. Well, he's come out for great Gay Pride Month, so that's something.
Did he?
Yeah,
That's
he
a
did.
shame.
Well, I guess by way of reparation, in a sense, the folk who sponsor that particular event have been whining that he comes out in support of it while eroding their rights. I don't know how he's been eroding their rights. I haven't seen same-sex marriage vanishing, but it's very tiring.
I'm gonna switch things up because I totally forgot in the beginning of the show. We kind of had a packed beginning of the show, so we totally skipped memes and dreams.
Oh!
And I figure where we are right now be a nice little thing to visit and close on.
All right.
Yeah, close the show on. So here I'm gonna bring it up for everybody. This is kind of a famous old timey meme. For those of you who are listening to the podcast and don't have video, so we've got. Yeah, this is a famous meme. It's where a dog is just sitting with a cup of coffee, and he's got these big eyes, and the whole house is on fire. And it's two slides, and so that's the first slide. The second slide, he's big eyed with a big old smile. And he says, "This is fine. This is fine."
Ah.
And I think that catches because that's just so indicative of our situation nowadays. That like the problems in church and state, and our leaders are basically this dog. Where the house is on fire, but everything's fine.
It's Moz. I
It's
mean,
See, yeah, that's why I want to talk about, because this relates to Moz, because essentially we are all this dog. I mean, we're all like this dog. Like, the country's on fire, but I mean, we can't really be all just running around screaming that everything's on fire, because that's just not livable, really.
well, it's not just that. I mean, it would be anti-flame.
Is that so bad?
Of course. Oh, I see. You're a flamist.
I'm a flamist.
You're a flamist. You're against flames being allowed to be themselves.
I just don't think they'd be happy that way.
What? Consuming stuff? Of course it would be. It's what flames do. That's like saying they wouldn't want to eat anything.
I don't think they should be governed by their appetites.
Well,
I got you there. There we go.
I don't think flames should be governed by their appetites.
Because it doesn't lead to happiness. I mean, we've learned
You need to appeal to the rational side of the flame. I get it.
Yeah. They need a certain detachment from the world. You see?
Yes. Well, you tell that to the flame. But the dog looks happy.
Hey, well, he is very happy. I mean, he's delightfully oblivious.
Yeah, this is fine.
Yeah. So no need to do much about anything. It's just chill
Sip
out.
his coffee. Yeah, he's chilling. I think we could all chill like that.
So, I mean, so we've established that that's not an appropriate reaction. No. But I think perhaps we've also established that sort of unlivable for everybody to go around screaming all the time. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say.
So what is the appropriate reaction to the house is on fire?
Look around for some water.
Okay, well let's take that out of. Okay, well let's unpack the metaphor then. And so how do we do that in terms of our situation?
We first analyze the nature of the flames.
Okay, let's analyze the nature of the flames.
What's burning?
Freedom is burning right now.
Oh, I like that. I like
civil
that
liberties.
I would like to see freedom's burning as a motto. Although burning freedom would be something entirely different. Man, I got me burning freedom.
Okay, so
I don't know that I want to unpack this metaphor. Let's just say that it's not enough to be aware. There is a need for action. The question is, what kind of action? Right. And that is the big $5,000 question. I don't know. If I did know, I would tell you. But I don't, so I won't. I do know, however, that the dog is likely to be burned to a crisp if he remains unaware. Maybe he's got to run out of the house. Maybe you should throw his cup of coffee at the fire. I don't think it would do much good. This is fine. But it honestly, we are at such a stage now. We have to bear in mind over and over again that our own personal salvation is more important and more tangible, really, than the salvation of society.
Yeah.
And we don't really, like the dog, we have no control over the burning house. We're not in a position to get the water. That's for our masters, who are as oblivious as the dog is. So what we have to do is really zero in on our own salvation, our own personal place, without becoming Moz-like, if we can avoid it. And we have to remember that our ancestors in the faith went through the same thing, because they were living in a crumbling political structure. And in the midst of that came the Arian heresy. So they had a double whammy or triple whammy because they also had the external threat. For us, it's the Muslims. For them, it was the barbarians and the Persians. On top of that, they had a crumbling state and a crumbling society, and they had the Arian heresy, which at one point was embraced by all but 5 of the bishops of the church to a greater or lesser degree. That's kind of a hard place to be in. But what did they do? They pursued personal holiness, personal orthodoxy. They were masters of their interior realms because they couldn't be masters of the exterior. And to take it, at a wider place, when you look at history, and not just in Christian realms, but throughout history, when people have been in similar situations where they're incapable of really influencing the macrocosm, then they cultivate their own gardens, because that's all you can do. It was out of the era of the civil wars in Japan, for instance, that the tea ceremony emerged. It was out of the period of the warring states in China that you had the story of the 7 sages of the bamboo grove. And these were 7 friends. They had an 8th friend who had money and had a position at the court of one of these little warring states. Well, he was executed on a trumped-up charge by the local warlord. And so his 7 friends withdrew to his estate out in the country, and they spent their time drinking and writing poetry. Well, I don't recommend that you just drink and write poetry, but my point is, they were called the 7 sages of the bamboo grove, partly because they'd gone to a bamboo grove, so it gave them their name, but also because they were considered sages because they had realized that you need to do what you're able to do. You can't do what you can't do. They weren't like the dog in the meme who ignores what's going on, who pretends it isn't going on. Probably what the dog should do in that case, the house is not really tenable from the look of things. He should probably put down his coffee cup, or maybe bring it with him, and get out of that house.
Yeah. So are you suggesting people should disconnect a little bit? Because that's sort of something that I have been contemplating, where, because, I mean, the worst thing you can do to yourself to always be angry, to me, is to follow politics closely.
Yeah, if you follow both politics and, one has to say, church as well as state politics.
Sure.
You will be in a perpetual state of anger, and that's a great place for the devil.
And I have disconnected to that. Well, also because based on Father Ripperger's advice, he says, even though it's true, if it has this impact on you, you need to get away from it. That's like in quotes right there. So I guess that's my question, is to what extent is it important to disconnect somewhat?
I think part of it is an individual thing. That is to say, it's not one size fits all.
Okay.
Because a lot depends on your state in life.
But and so I'm asking this because, I see. Yeah, state in life, because like I can't do anything about it. You see, and I'm other than like casting a good vote. I mean, which I don't really need to be that informed. I mean, do I?
No, and not only that, and you've heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. If you're really interested in politics, your best bet is to focus on the local scene. You don't have this problem in your town, Arcadia, but in my neighboring village of Monrovia, we're a bedroom community of LA. Most people don't even know who their mayor or city council are, or even if they have one.
Yeah.
And so something like 10% turn out to vote. I was part of that 10% in the last mayoral election, and I noticed that except for the mayor himself, nobody was opposed. Because nobody bothered.
Yeah.
It's what I call the dictatorship of the involved.
Yeah.
If you show up, you're in charge. Now, mind you, in Monrovia, that's not a bad deal. It's a very well-run city. And I'm glad the mayor beat his opponent, who was actually an actor who was trying to, garner publicity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad they were all reelected because the city is very well run. But what if it was Bell? What if it was Maywood? Towns which have become legendary for their corruption.
Yeah.
How they were able to get millions of dollars out of the poor immigrant taxpayers of Bell, I'll never know. But they did.
Yeah.
Imagine if those millions had gone into infrastructure, into the library and schools and so forth. Bloody Bell would be paradise on earth. And all because the people are simply uninvolved. So my advice is that you look toward the local scene where people tend not to look and where you can do the most good in a real sense. Because you have a voice on the local scene. Unless you're in LA or New York or Chicago or somewhere. But if you live in a medium-sized to small town or small city, you actually do have a voice in local politics. And those are the politics that, for the most part, really affect you the most.
Mm.
So that's something, if you've got a yen for that kind of thing, you can put your attention to. And I've often said to people that local associations, historic preservation, conservation, et cetera, these are all good outlets. And they're constructive outlets because you're helping to build the community where you actually live and make it a better place. And this kind of activity will give you opportunities for evangelization.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think and get concrete ideas because, you're saying get involved in the local level. Well, okay, most people aren't creative enough to, like, what exactly does that mean? So I'm trying to arrive at actual functions and ideas.
I'll give you an example. Now, and I do this from personal knowledge. You have in Arcadia an historical museum. It's well worth seeing.
Yeah.
But you might do volunteer work there or with the Arcadia Historical Society. These seem like small things, except they're not. The Arcadia Public Library, for instance, has a Friends of the Library. That's a very worthwhile cause.
Well, how does that make an impact?
What's that?
How does that make an impact politically?
A functioning library, a well-functioning library, is one of the major things that local government tries to do. And of course, if you get well known doing these things, you pick up a reputation amongst the people who are active in local civic life. Mind you, that means you can't be the weird guy. But if you if you're reasonably competent, you're a hard worker, you're bright, and you're principled, that could be the start of something.
Okay, so volunteer where?
Library.
I thought they have employees. I thought they have employees. That's not
never enough.
Oh, really?
Never enough.
Wow.
And you can tutor and things like that. They have all sorts of programs. Storytelling.
Storytelling?
Yeah, for children in the summer.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just picturing like, oh, can I volunteer to tell a story to children? Who are you?
Well, no, what you would do is you would go and see what kind of volunteer work they needed.
Okay.
Speaking about the library is actually an important thing for me, partly because I learned a lot more in libraries than I ever did in classrooms, but also because today is the 7th anniversary of the death of my old acquaintance, Ray Bradbury.
Mm.
And Ray Bradbury was a big, big proponent of public libraries as a superior form of education to public schools. He used to say, we should really take our money out of the schools and universities and put them into the libraries.
Mm.
Because that is where people who really want to learn go to learn.
Yeah.
Whereas in schools, they're dragooned to be there. They don't have a choice anyway.
Huh.
But I mention this, though, only as one possibility. A lot depends on the nature of your town. You could, do volunteer work for the fire department or the police department.
Is it really that
They're always
simple?
having.
Is it really that simple?
Yeah, they all have drives. You know, the Chamber of Commerce in your town. I mean, there's an Arcadia Chamber of Commerce. You're a business. You could join them. See what could be.
Right after the show's done, I'm gonna look. I'm gonna see if it's like, oh, okay, yeah, volunteers, because that sounds interesting. But to me, I had the impression that it's harder than you're making it sound.
You have the impression.
Yes, I know it's just an impression, but I guess I'll try.
See, the trick is if you try, and it goes nowhere, then you tried and it went nowhere.
But
if
then
you don't
I'll feel
try,
terrible. I got rejected, and it's hard to get back on that horse, Charles. They didn't.
If they reject you,
I'm offering to be a slave, and they said, you know what? You're not even worthy to be a slave. Get out.
If you're that sensitive,
Charles.
maybe you shouldn't go out at all. Go talk to the postman.
I do actually on my walk.
Well, don't talk to the postman. What if he has other places to go? He'd leave you. Let's say you talk to the postman, and then he says, "Well, that's nice. I got to go deliver mail. Bye." Well, how would you feel then? Don't risk it.
Well, that's more of a casual encounter rather than preparing yourself emotionally for acceptance.
It's not that big a deal. All you do is you see if they want help, and if they don't, you're fine. You're clear. You did your part.
Okay. Well, we'll give it a go, I guess.
See what happens. I mean, the worst they can say is no, and in that case, you don't have to do extra work.
Okay.
See, remember, every rejection means less work.
No, it means God doesn't trust me.
No, it means less work.
Okay.
It means less work.
It's like, gosh, okay.
When I have people tell me, you don't know what you're doing, blah, 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 my response is always, you're right. It's all yours.
Okay, well, that's good. I kind of like that adding, okay, all right, it's all yours. Fine. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. You don't need me? Great. Take care of it. Have a good time. I mean, it's like, again, my late father, a friend of ours asked my brother and me once if either of us could ever go an hour without quoting our dad. And we looked at each other and laughed and said, nah. But somebody asked him once at a meeting, when he was still working for another company, asked him, we never seem to get upset about these things. Why not? Dad said, they don't pay me enough to care. If they paid me more, I'd be more emotionally invested. But for what I get,
that's good. Okay.
Doubly for volunteer work.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
They're not going to pay you enough to care.
Definitely. Okay, well, that'll do it for this episode.
All right.
If you'd like to send Charles a question, you can do so through the Tumbler House website on the Contact Us page. Again, if you want priority on the questions, become a patron, as low as $1 a month. Get our books at tumblerhouse.com. We have all these wonderful books. For Charles's books, cheapest place around for Charles's books. And that'll do it. So we'll see you next time. And remember, if it's Monday, it's off the menu.
And the soul you save might be your own.